The year was 586 BC. The fall of Jerusalem is a significant event in biblical history, marking the destruction of the city and the temple by foreign invaders. The Bible provides detailed accounts of this tragic event, focusing on its causes, key players, and the spiritual lessons set forth. The fall of Jerusalem occurred during the reign of King Zedekiah, the last king of Judah, and was brought about by the Babylonian Empire under King Nebuchadnezzar in 586 BC. This event was the culmination of years of disobedience, idolatry, and neglect of God's commandments by the people of Judah and their leaders. The Bible vividly describes the shocking and sinful behaviors of the people of Judah and Jerusalem leading up to the fall of Jerusalem in 586 BC, which deeply angered God and led to his judgment. The people of Jerusalem turned away from worshipping Yahweh and engaged in rampant idolatry, worshipping gods such as Baal, Asherah, and Molech. They set up altars to these false gods, even in the temple of the Lord, desecrating the sacred space dedicated to Yahweh. One of the most horrific practices was the burning of children alive as sacrifices to Molech in the valley of Hinnom, as described in Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 31, and 2 Chronicles chapter 28, verse 3. This practice was explicitly condemned by God, who declared it an abomination that he never commanded or desired. Acts of sexual immorality were being conducted. The worship of fertility gods like Baal and Asherah involved ritual sexual acts, including prostitution within the temple precincts. Both men and women participated in these degrading acts as part of their worship, defiling the temple and breaking God's covenant. God, through the prophets, frequently compared Jerusalem's unfaithfulness to spiritual adultery, portraying the nation as a promiscuous woman betraying her husband. Violence and bloodshed were displayed. The streets of Jerusalem were filled with violence and murder. Innocent people were being oppressed and killed, often for personal or political gain. Judah's kings, especially Zedekiah, were weak and corrupt. Zedekiah ignored Jeremiah's counsel to surrender to Babylon, which could have spared the city, Jeremiah 38:17-18. Leaders, priests and prophets abused their positions of power to exploit the people, allowing injustice to flourish. Judah rebelled against Babylon, seeking alliances with Egypt despite warnings from Jeremiah not to do so, Jeremiah 37:5-10. The shedding of innocent blood was a common occurrence. God condemned the people for spilling innocent blood in their sacrifices, their feuds, and their general disregard for human life. And the corruption of leaders and priests became increasingly worse than ever. The kings of Judah, particularly King Manasseh, led the nation into greater sin. Manasseh encouraged idolatry, child sacrifice, and sorcery, provoking God's anger. The priests and prophets became corrupt, preaching lies and giving false assurances of peace when destruction was imminent. Even the judges and officials perverted justice for bribes, oppressing the poor, orphans and widows. In conjunction, profaning the Sabbath day was a regular occurrence. The people blatantly ignored God's command to observe the Sabbath as holy. Instead, they treated it like any other day, engaging in trade and work. God explicitly warned that this disregard for the Sabbath would bring destruction upon them. A regular occurrence among the people was the practice of sorcery, witchcraft, and divination. Many turned to witchcraft, sorcery, and necromancy, which means the communication with the dead, to seek guidance instead of turning to God. This reliance on occult practices was an abomination to God, violating his commands and demonstrating their rejection of him as their source of wisdom. Despite repeated warnings from prophets like Jeremiah, Isaiah, and Ezekiel, the people mocked and rejected them. They arrogantly believed they were safe because the temple was in Jerusalem, dismissing the idea that God would ever allow his holy city to fall. During the Babylonian siege, The famine became so severe that some resorted to cannibalism, fulfilling horrifying prophecies. Parents were forced to eat their own children in desperation, a shocking reflection of how far the nation had fallen. In the 11th year of Zedekiah's reign, the Babylonian army breached the city walls, signaling the end of resistance. Zedekiah attempted to flee, but was captured near Jericho. His sons were killed before him, and he was blinded and taken to Babylon in chains. God's judgment was severe. He declared through the prophets that Jerusalem would be destroyed and its people exiled as punishment for their wickedness. In Ezekiel's visions, the glory of the Lord departed from the temple, symbolizing God's withdrawal of his protection from Jerusalem. The city was burned, the temple destroyed, and the people taken into exile as God executed his righteous judgment. Despite the catastrophe, the Bible emphasizes that God was in control, using Babylon as an instrument of discipline. The Jews remained in Babylon for 70 years. During this time, they adapted to life in a foreign land while holding on to their faith. The exile prompted a deeper commitment to the law and a rejection of idolatry, which marked a significant shift in Jewish religious identity. 70 years later, under Persian King Cyrus the Great, the exiles were allowed to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple. The fall of Jerusalem serves as a sobering reminder of the cost of turning away from God. The fall of Jerusalem is not only a historical tragedy, but also a profound spiritual lesson that continues to resonate with believers today. It highlights the dangers of rebellion against God and the enduring hope of redemption through his grace. If you enjoyed this video, please give us a thumbs up and share this message. And if you haven't already, come on over and join our family by subscribing to our channel. May God bless you and all your endeavors. Thank you for watching.